Hello, everyone. Thank you for joining us today in this meetup here at Madrid-GUG. We have today with us Puneet. Hello, Puneet. How are you? Puneet is muted.
I'm sorry. Hi, everyone. Good afternoon, good morning if anyone is joining from States, or if anyone from local here, good evening. I'm glad to be here. I would like to thank Ivan and Alberto to invite me to this meetup. I mean, I've only heard about it. I think this is my first time here, right? Apart from the conference.
Exactly, yeah. We are happy to have you here. So I'm going to share my screen very quickly to just present the group, and then I will leave Puneet to give his talk. So we are Madrid-GUG user group. We are a local group here in Madrid, in Spain. We have talks about Groovy and the whole ecosystem. So in the past, we've done talks about Groovy, about Grails, about Gradle, Micronaut, Spring Boot, everything related or not. Sometimes it's not 100% related with Groovy, right? So if you want to give a talk here in our user group, just ping me our Twitter account or my personal account. That's fine. We have in our webpage, madrid.gug.com, we have like 8 or 9 years of recording talks. Most of them are in Spanish, but a few of them, especially the last few of them since the pandemic started, are in English. So you will understand everything. We have this open collective theme to keep the group running, right? We are a non-profit thing. And basically we just need a few money for the webpage, the certificates, the domain, and things like that. So if you want to collaborate with us, go to this open collective/Madrid-GUG. And I want to thank our sponsors. Adaptavis, we are using their Zoom account for doing these meetups. B2Boost, they are our recurring sponsor in our open collective. They are a company that uses Groovy, that uses Grails, that now are using Micronaut. They have been supporting us for a long time. JetBrains, we will raffle a couple of licenses after the end of the talk. So if you are interested, don't leave after the talk. OCI used to cover our drinks after our meetups when they were in person. So for a long time, we are not using that money we have there. And also Grids, as you probably are aware, we created a conference a long time ago, and Grids was about Ruby and the whole ecosystem. So it's also another of sponsors. So if you are interested in joining our raffle at the end of the talk, go to that URL or QR code. I will share that after the talk, so don't worry. Basically, the only thing you need to put is your name in the form, because only if you join or if you sign up into this form, you will be able to win one of the JetBrains licenses. And basically that's it. Puneet, this all yours. Yeah.
Can you see my screen?
Yeah, perfect. So all yours. Thank you.
All right.
Just one final thing before I forget. If you have any questions, please share the questions on the chat, and I will read the questions after Puneet's talk. Thank you.
I'm unmuted, right? Okay. Hi, everyone. Good to be here, and I'm excited about Grails framework and the upcoming releases, and especially being present in this group. I hope every one of you is safe, and yeah, let's get started. So we are going to talk about what's, we recently released Grails 5, I think in November or first week of November. So this talk is basically about, what's going on in Grails framework, 5 and, upcoming, and, what does that mean for you to upgrade to 5? Let me just move to the next slide. Upgrade to 5. We'll see in more details later. Before that, a little bit about me. My name is Puneet Behl, and I'm currently working as a Grails development lead at Object Computing. I am, enthusiastic about, or excited about open source technologies like Grails, Groovy, Micronaut, Docker, anything. And here's my Twitter URL or username. Please feel free to stay in touch. I like to stay in touch with everybody. So for today's talk, as I mentioned earlier, that we'll start with, Grails 5, and then what does that mean for you to upgrade? What are the other changes around Grails framework? And what does Micronaut integration means for you? Although this is not something new in Grails 5, but this is, this is something more interesting. So I would like to spend some time about it. And then, what's recent updates and, what are the plans moving forward with the Grails framework. Grails 5, if you are working on Grails, then you may already be aware of the fact that Grails is basically sitting on giants. So, Grails framework 5, we basically updated to whatever latest stable releases are available. I mean, like Apache Groovy 3 is one of the major highlight for Grails 5. We also, upgraded to Gradle 7 and Micronaut 3, Spring Boot to their latest. I mean, like I think Spring Framework was 5.1. We moved to 5.3, and Spring Boot was 2.4 or something, and then we moved to 2.6. For 5.0, we basically went to 2.5, and I'm sorry about 2.6. I mean, 2.6 would be the next release, in the next minor release. So apart from that, the Spock, all these framework internally actually updated to Groovy 3. That means, Spock as well. I mean, Spock, there is a new release of Spock 2, which basically is based on Groovy 3. So these are the major, there are a bunch of other dependencies which are being updated, but these are one of the major highlights. I mean, like, next, I mean, like, as a JUnit 5, I mean, we in Grails 5, we basically moved away from Grails JUnit 4, and then all the tests, which were running on JUnit 4 would not work, or basically does not support. So a bit about JUnit 5, although I would not dive in, but all the basically annotations for JUnit 5, like at test, our annotations are in this API package. And for assertions, which we will need because earlier I think they were present for you, but now what I did, as a part of updation, like I had a static import for this assertion, and then I have all the assertions available. Obviously you need to look into more details about some of the assertions which would not work, or there are some signature changes, but this is nothing major, which or I didn't see anything major which will halt your work, or which would be breaking. Things like before each and after each, like there was like before and after earlier, and and then there was something which something similar, something which basically runs before all the tests. So I forgot the name of the annotation in JUnit 4, but yeah, in JUnit 5, those are replaced by after all and before all. As I said initially, I mean, like, JUnit 4 tests would not work. That is true, but you can make it work by, using this JUnit vintage engine dependency in your runtime class path. This will basically pick all the JUnit tests and run it against JUnit 5, JUnit platform. I would strongly recommend you have JUnit tests to go through the documentation of this migration guide. This is very well documented before actually updating to JUnit 5 or Spock. Grails Gradle plugin is another thing, you might have noticed, like this apply statement or apply plugin Grails web or Grails profile, whatever. So these basically comes from a Gradle plugin, which is Grails Gradle plugin, and earlier it was part of the Grails core module, but now this has been moved out. And the reason for it was like this plugin would not advance as the same speed as of Grails framework. So what that means is like you would also see when you create a new application for Grails 5, you would see this new property in Grail.properties file, which basically represents the version of the plugin. Earlier it was coupled with the Grails version. So you would have Grails 5.1, 2, 3, 4, and but Grails Gradle plugin might still be on 5.0 or 5.0.0. So that's another change you would notice in Grails 5. Semantic, we also, the Grails team, we decided, to move towards semantic versioning because it, makes it more easy or predictable. Like if we go in the past and talk about, Grails 301, 302, we were not sure. For me personally, I don't know about the community, but that, whether there would be a breaking change or not, or, whether I can basically upgrade from 3.0 to 3.1 without any hesitance, or, what breaking changes would I see? Although the documentation was there, but but semantic versioning basically gives you more, makes this process more easy, or, helps you decide whether to upgrade or not. So any minor version or patch version should be a drop-in replacement. Apart from the semantic versioning, we also are planning for a release cadence, which means that we'll not wait for a specific release or feature to be implemented. We are, although we've been a little off track into 2021 with this cadence, doing every minor patch release bi-weekly, so that the patches or bug fixes are out quickly. But we are planning, we are working on this release cadence of every patch release bi-weekly, and then a month there will be a minor release, and then a year there will be a major release. So updating the patch and minor would be straightforward for you, but for a major there would be breaking changes, but we'll make sure that the path is easy, not something which you might have experienced from Grails 2 to Grails 3. You can read more about semantic version on this link. Grails plugin, when we talk about Grails framework, Grails plugin plays an important role. We have a whole lot of plugins for Grails framework. So, with Grails 5, most plugins which basically used to work with Grails 4 should work with Grails 5, unless they are using some deprecated API of Spring or Spring Boot, which are now removed in the major version. But I didn't see too many changes around plugin. Most plugins are still working. But yeah, obviously you would want to update dependencies to to the latest and then do a release. So for those scenarios, we would recommend you to basically write configurations. What configuration means, I would not go deep in this today, but the configuration, here I'm saying configuration in terms of Micronaut. You could build a library, so such as, for instance, a text message library, which would have use case in Micronaut, which would have use case in Grails or Spring. So you can, with the help of Micronaut for Spring, you could use those things and then migrate your existing library, or build a new library based on that, so that it is working with Grails and Micronaut and Spring Boot. I think there is a guide about it in Grails guides, so you should be able to find that out. But yeah, moving forward, we would recommend you to build configurations, unless there are some specific features such as GSPs or GOM, which depends on which cannot work. GSP cannot work with Micronaut. So in that case, you would need to write a Grails plugin. But yeah. There was another recent news in May. I think JFrog and Bintray shut down. For us, that means a complete distraction. All our artifacts or plugins were actually hosted on Bintray, and it was very easy for the community to push their plugins and or for us to maintain and release. But moving forward, this would not work. So we actually migrated for all existing artifacts. We migrated them to an artifactory, which is again hosted by JFrog, repo.grails.org. But you would not be allowed to publish new plugins to JFrog. So for that, I think you can publish blogs or artifacts to the Maven Central, that's what we are doing. So, and also there's a blog around it to, how you can publish Grails artifact to Maven Central. But yeah, you're not bound by it. You can publish artifacts anywhere you want, and just, and yeah, but yeah. And with JFrog or Bintray shutdown, I mean, there were some internal plugins, Grails plugins, not internal, which we were maintaining, the Grails Gradle plugin, Grails Gradle publish plugin, and profile publish plugin. You might have seen like Grails publish blog, Grails core, and Grails 3 and 4 early releases of 4s. That basically configure that were coupled with the Bintray and and JFrog Artifactory. But since that is shut down, those plugin does not work. So we have removed those plugins from latest version of Grails 4 and 5. And instead, now you can use Maven publish plugin from Gradle, and there is a great documentation around it. You can publish your artifact to Maven Central or any artifactory using this plugin. One thing which you need to do when you publish your artifact to Grails, Maven Central, or I'm saying artifacts, but I mean plugins. When you publish plugins to,
I didn't get that. Could you try again?
Oh damn it! I'm sorry. Yeah, one thing you will need to take care of when you publish plugins is, there's a Grails plugin portal that earlier was using Bintray APIs to basically fetch the list of all the plugins and then, show the information over there. We basically migrated that to a GitHub repository. We basically host a JSON file on the GitHub repository, and then if you publish a new plugin, you would send a pull request to add your plugin information to that JSON. And then that will be included into the plugin portal, but that basically goes with an approval process. And if you have an existing plugin and you are releasing a new version of it, then you need to basically update the information on that existing JSON. And then there is a field called Maven Metadata URL. So you would have to add the URL of the Maven Metadata file. And once that is done, moving forward, it will basically automatically update when there is a new release. So you would not have to send pull requests after each release. Again, with the JFrog, I mean, in June or somewhere around that, Grails Artifactory instance was updated, and then a wrapper start failing, an old Grails wrapper because of some URL changes where the URL it used to retrieve no longer supported. So that has been fixed, and then you should be able to download the new wrappers from the specific blog. But yeah, for new applications, this would not be an issue. This is all about Grails framework, and let's talk about how you can upgrade your application or plugins to Grails 5. I mean, like I'm talking about Grails 4, not Grails 2 or 3. It would be different, and then you would have to, for 2 and 3, you would have to check the release notes or migrating instructions. But from 4 to 5, it should be pretty easy. One motivation for moving to Grails 5 or would be that Grails 3 is end of life. So I think this should be the good time for anybody to upgrade their applications or plugins to Grails 5. As a part of that process, as I already mentioned, you need to migrate all the tests from JUnit 4 to 5. I said migration because I think since Vintage Engine does something to make JUnit 4 work, but there might be some scenarios where the test would not behave well. So I would suggest you to either update them to JUnit 5 or Spock. I like Spock very much, so why not Spock? So you would need to, in your Grail.properties file, you would need to change the Grails version to 5.01 or 5.03. That is the latest. I'm sorry about references to 510 due to some issues with Sonatype OSS repository. I could not publish 510 today, but yeah, hopefully once those are resolved, 510 would be out. So all those references should be 503. That is the latest Grails version available. So you need to update that to 503 and remove any references to JCenter in your repository section in build.gradle. We updated to Gradle 7.2, but before that, we would suggest you to run the build scan from Gradle. That will tell you all the deprecations you are using. And once and all the ones which are not working with Gradle 7.2, so that way you can migrate those in the current version and then update to 7.2 with this wrapper command. Gradle scope changes. The scope scope changes are there. Like earlier it was compile runtime. I think that has been taken away. So you would need to change those accordingly. We'll see in more details in the later slides. What replaces what. As I said, Apache Groovy 3 is the major highlight. And what does that mean? Like you should not see any JDK warnings with Apache Groovy 3. The latest Java support 6 support is there, and then there is a new parrot parser. Basically it allows you to write more Java like function, use Java like syntax, right? Like lambda and do while, and there are several other features, syntaxes which Rails now supports due to Groovy 3. And there are several new addition extension methods like calling collect on futures, average. There are certain, so you could check out all those things in this release notes. So apart from that, Groovy 3 is being much stricter with the compile static. You may see some errors, but we are continuously working with Apache Groovy 3, and they're pretty quick on fixing those issues or sharing information. So if you have any if you see any issues updating to Grails 5, please feel free to reach out to me on Twitter or on Slack, wherever. We would be happy to help you. But yeah, yeah, it's, as I said, it's more stricter, but you should be able to work around it. Ideally, it is it is a good feature, but yeah. We updated from GOM 7 to 7.1, although 7.1 sounds like a minor release, but no, this is a major release from GOM 7. We updated to Groovy 3, Spring and Spring Boot. We also updated to Hibernate 5.5.7 from 5.4 or something. And then the driver for MongoDB is now upgraded to latest 4.0 version. And also for Neo4j, we updated to Neo4j 4 from I think 3. So all these are major releases. So we would strongly recommend you to check out the release notes or documentation around them. They're very well documented. Maybe ideally you would not see much impact in your Grails application because GOM is basically working. You're not directly using Hibernate, so GOM plays a role. So you should not be seeing any issue. You should not be seeing any issues with the GOM or updating to Hibernate 5 or these drivers. So what does Spring Boot changes? I mean, like Hibernate validator has been upgraded to 6.2. There are new features, in Spring Boot internally, like environment variable prefix, like you can run say multiple instances of a same application, by providing this environment variable prefix, and then it'll all those configuration would be prefixed with environment variable name, such as like say my app1, my app2. So you can basically provide configurations in such a manner. There are some new matrices at endpoints, and again, this version basically upgraded to support Groovy 3. And that brings Java 16 support. There is a Jetty 10 support now in Spring 2.5.3. There are some configuration changes. There are some new configurations, some has been renamed, all those are documented in this link. And there for more, I mean, like you could definitely go to Spring Boot release notes. But in Grails application, I mean, it would not directly, I didn't see many issues of, apart from the deprecated classes, which are removed. But I don't think there are many major breaking changes for Grails users or Grails applications. So it should be good. Again, the Spring version basically supports Groovy 3 now, and we would recommend you to check out what's new in Spring 5.x. But there is nothing breaking for us in terms of Spring 5.x, updating to Spring 5.x. Gradle 7.2, as I said, the JCenter would be gone or or deprecated, I guess. We would suggest you to use Maven Central or Grails Maven artifact tree, where we migrated all the artifacts. We used to have this provided scope in Grails 3 and 4. That has been gone now. This was actually provided by a Gradle plugin. This was broken for a long time. Like after Gradle 3, this provided scope was something similar to API. So in Grails 5, we basically removed this plugin altogether, and then the scope is no longer present. You could the Gradle team documented that you could migrate it to compile only, but and that's very well. But if you don't want to break your existing plugin, I think it should be replaced with API. Apache Groovy, this version of Gradle again is updated to support Apache Groovy 3. As I said, removal of compile and runtime configurations. That also means the compile scope and runtime scope. Those would not work in Gradle 7. So we used to have this Maven plugin, so it should be updated to use Maven publish. There are some changes around, copy task, which, earlier it automatically deals in case, you're copying file from one source to another. When there are duplicates present, now you have to explicitly specify the duplicate strategy. For more, I mean, like you could check out the Gradle documentation and the release notes for Gradle 7.2, what's new. Regarding the scope, I meant, I mean, like, compile only and would still be compile only, and compile would mean API or implementation, depending on whether you are building a library for other applications to use, or you're creating or you are replacing it in a Grails application, a web application or something. Then you would basically replace it with implementation. And similarly for runtime, it should be runtime only. Test compile should be replaced with test implementation. Test runtime should be test runtime only. And then provided, again, as I said earlier, provided might be a compile only or an API dependency for Grails plugins. We also upgraded to Micronaut 3 in Grails 5. Although Micronaut upgrading Micronaut would not have much impact directly on Grails application or Grails users, but just one important thing to note, right? By default now Micronaut ships with Jakarta inject annotations. So I mean, like replacing them in Grails is not a choice, an option. So I would say you would need to have this dependency for Java xinject in your libraries or plugins. For Grails applications or new applications, this would be coming transitively with Grails 4. You could read more details on this blog about Micronaut Framework 3. There are certain changes around build and infrastructure of Grails framework starting Grails 5. Such as we are continuously working with Gradle Enterprise or Gradle people from Gradle to improve the performance of Grails builds, and this would soon be reflected in Grails core build structure as well. Although there are these builds are not sophisticated, but we'll try to improve this and see if there are any scope of improvements. But it is definitely an improvement for Grails core and all other Grails projects. We migrated from all the Travis infrastructure to GitHub workflows. So most Grails applications or projects now uses GitHub workflow or GitHub Actions to publish or run tests. All our new artifacts are published to Maven Central now. Although, as I said earlier, that Micronaut integration is not something new, but this is something exciting, and and there is very less talk about, or there might be very less information about what Micronaut integration means. So I'll not, do a deep dive. It could be on another session altogether. But I'll show some examples of, how you can use Micronaut with Grails moving forward, or what does that mean for Grails users. So one of the powerful features when I talk about Micronaut is the declarative HTTP client. So we used to have this Grails data source REST client earlier in Grails 3 or GOM 6, but starting Grails 4 with Micronaut integration, we advocated users to use Micronaut HTTP client. I mean, this is much powerful and much flexible and easy to understand. As you can see right now is an example of, application forge to basically list all the profiles for Grails application. So let me see if I can, let me share some examples of using a Micronaut client. So I'm not going to live code here, but I have some ready-made examples.
We cannot see, Puneet. We cannot see.
Yeah. I am going to share it. I'm just opening the IDE and then I'll share it. No worries. Yeah. But it's good to have, someone say back something in an online session.
Sure, anytime.
Oh, man. Stop sharing and share screen. Stop 3. Yes. Sure. So please let me know if you can see my screen now.
Yeah, we can.
Awesome. Okay. So hold on. For example. So here I have a search controller, and I'll show you examples of both the low-level client and using a declarative version of it. We have these two endpoints. One is, API, which basically accepts a term query to search, and we are, we are using Apple iTunes API to, search for albums or so let's just see a low-level implementation of the client. It is so we have this search service, which basically takes a string term and then returns, the search query. The first thing you need to do in order to use Micronaut HTTP client in the source main Groovy, or you would need to add this implementation scope to the class dependency, right? If you create an application by default, it will be present in, I guess, a test implementation scope, but it should, you need to add that in, implementation as well. So once that is done, let me open up the service. So this is like low-level implementation. It basically takes a base URL, right? And it's some pagination, media type, entity, and term. This basically creates, GET requests to iTunes Apple, with these query parameters, and then you would get a HTTP response, a string JSON response. We are using Jackson, I think, to parse this, JSON response and then map it to search result object. Search result object is nothing but a list of albums and the number of albums, right? So please feel free to ask if you have any questions on this right now.
There are no questions at the moment.
Right. So let me run this real quick and show you how that works. Yeah, my system just goes very slow when I do, a video call. I don't know why. Okay, the application is up, and I think let me open up the URL mappings. See what URLs I'm exposing. It's search API and the query, right? Okay, so here's my browser, and let me say search API, and then let's say query of anything like T. Let's see if it returns anything with T. Yeah, so it returns all these. I mean, albums from Apple iTunes library, and then result as a JSON response. So that's why I like Micronaut Declarative client. It's very readable and easy to use, and it provides more features than just this. This is a low-level version of it, and then there is a declarative version of the same. So for a declarative version, we created this declarative client, and then you can call search, and then it would return the search result. But let's see what is inside declarative version. So you can use Micronaut add client annotation, define the URL, and then with get a method. Please note these are from Micronaut package. Then query and query parameters. You can even pass, the term values inside this query string. A method argument, like if there is something else, you can also use that here. So for example, if I want to, parameterize limit, then I can also pass limit as a value and use it here instead of hard coding. So again, let me go back to, hold on. Go back to search controller. So there's another endpoint client which basically use declarative client to search, and then let me hit that. This should be client, right? And I say or something. I don't know. Yep. Yeah. So it returns all these results, again from that library using a declarative client now. Just a sneak peek. These interfaces basically generate some classes. When you need to debug, you would see some extra classes in your, due to Micronaut client, you would see some extra classes like interceptor definition and references. Yeah, you can look at the source code later, but all right. So this is one usage of declarative HTTP client. Another usage would be to test your existing applications. The REST endpoints, you can test your applications using declarative HTTP client. One example of something here is, let's say I have a record label controller, which basically hosts a list of records such as save and I think save and list endpoint are there only right now. And this is all Grails stuff. The Grails service and record label is a domain, right? And since the application is running, I should be able to hit the endpoint or this endpoint, get record label, right? Let me see if it returns a result. Yeah. So let's say these are the two results. And in order to test this controller, I can also write integration test, which basically use HTTP client from Micronaut. And then this is you initialize the URL and you create a client, initialize the client here. You can also create a declarative version of client as well. This is a low-level implementation, and then I'll call blocking client, exchange, the URL, and what type of result I want. I mean, like it's a list of app objects, right? So this would basically, how you can use HTTP client to test your APIs as well. And similarly, there's another test which basically save a record by sending a post request with data, and then map is the return type of the post, right? It basically returns the object back itself, the saved object with ID and name. So I can execute this test. It would run fine. But yeah, since application is running, I just don't want to run it. But yeah, so this is how you can basically use Micronaut HTTP client in your test as well. Yeah, please, Ivan, please feel free to stop me, or when there is some question around it.
There is a question, but it's not related to the HTTP client, so I think we can leave it for the end of the talk.
Okay, thank you. Sure. Right. Let's get back. Another, it's not just a basic, client which basically tests some endpoints. You can also use this client to test authentication as well. So, yeah, I mean, like this is an example test. I mean, like where, I hit to this API login, and then, yeah, let me open up the application. Let me see. And then from there, I'll show you. This is not testing support, just security, right? So here I have a Grails application, Grails 5 application, which basically, use Spring Security Core and the Spring Security REST, and then it should also have, since we don't need it in the we only need the client for testing. We don't need to add it in the implementation scope. So we also have this dependency, and these are the two for the security code and REST. We have this announcement controller, API announcement controller, which basically is a REST controller, and gives you a list of announcements. And this is basically a CRUD for announcement. And announcement is nothing, just a object with a message, right? Okay. So this is a Grails default CRUD controller, and default services for Mint. And then these services are generated using Spring Security Core and REST. And here's the interesting stuff. I mean, so one thing I would like to show you is something. These are the configuration for Spring Security. We are using intercept map URL to define the permissions for URL. And yeah, now let's see the test case for it. So as I said, we have an API announcement endpoint, and this is defined in URL mappings.groovy class, right? This basically go to this API announcement controller, which basically is the RESTful controller for announcement domain. And here's the integration test. Before the integration test, we created some model. I mean, for representing an error, we have a class custom error. For OAuth credential, we have this user credential and bearer token, and then there is announcement view, which basically represents the message from announcements. It's contain an ID and the message. So coming to the test, again, we'll initialize the client, right? And then here's the first test, which basically checks that the response is unauthorized when you call this API without any credentials, right? So we call exchange, and then we create a GET request to announcements, and then what we expect back is a list of announcement views. And you can also specify error handler. I mean, like if it is not a success response, it would expect a custom error type object. So the first, it throws an exception, when called without any credentials, and the status of this HTTP client exception is unauthorized. And then further, you can check the error message. As we defined a custom error type argument here, the body would contain a custom error, and custom error is like, status, error, message, and path. So, you would say unauthorized, there is no message return, and then which path it was requested with, and the status code. This is one test to test the failure, that our security works. Then another test would be to, another test would be to test the secure, with the credentials, with the correct credentials. This would be basically, I created a user share lock and password elementary. This user is basically created in the bootstrap.groovy file. Hold on. So we registered a bunch of users in Bootstrap, like one is Sherlock, another is Watson. Sherlock is user role boss, and Watson is employee, right? And then there is one announcement, say the Hound of the Baskervilles. Please note all these examples are present in the Grails guides, and if you still have any questions, yeah, just feel free to ask us. So we created some users, and just to give you what is the security on API endpoint. API announcement, right? That was the URL. Yeah, this is like role boss, right? Save announcement, only boss can view the announcement, or save an announcement. So going back to our test case, we use this credential with the role boss, and then we send a request. The response of this API login, this is basically exposed from Swiftling security REST plugin, would be a bearer token, which basically contains access token, which we will use to send next request, and a refresh token. Once the access token expires, you can use refresh token to generate a new access token, and then what role does the user has, and for which user the token is for. So we verified, all the roles available, and once we get the access token from the body, then we make another call to the API announcements endpoint with the new bearer token, right? Header, you pass out, authorization header. So in order to pass a header, you can on the get method, which is basically a HTTP request. You might have seen in the earlier examples, like it was written in this way, right? So that it's easier to read, request, this, and then, these header methods are on the request, okay? So you can prepare the request directly, or you can write it in a single line as well. And then what is the response type? It's a list of announcement views. It is the same request as before, but with the authorization information. And then response status is 200. And then, we get the body, and then, objects, list of objects from the body. And we verify that. This is one with, with checking the right credentials, but there could be a user, another test which basically represent a user does not have a role, and then accessing endpoint, which should return a forbidden. You can write all sort of tests, but this is one of the example of testing how powerful the Micronaut HTTP client is. It's not just some REST. You can also configure. I mean, like, you can always configure with the other libraries as well, but how easy or readable it is with Micronaut HTTP client. That's what I'm trying to say here. Okay, and let me go back to the slides. There is you can also use configurations like RabbitMQ or Kafka integration with Micronaut. Let me show you example for the same. So here I have a bunch of Grails applications. Like, one is a main application, another is analytics, which basically is a listener, which it's store analytics for books, right? We have this analytics controller. Analytics is just a domain here. Book analytics, which contains ISBN and count, which book and how many times. And then analytic controller basically calls the book analytics service and then returns the analytics for the same. Because we are not updating analytics information through the endpoint, so there should be a listener. So there is this analytic listener, and before that, I want to show you the dependencies you need to add. So you need to have Micronaut Kafka and messaging and inject Groovy in implementation in order to use Micronaut Kafka client. You may not need this, it just to have a correct version. I have it here, but yeah. So we have this simple Kafka listener. Syntax is similar to Micronaut. You created a Micronaut class, a Groovy class with Micronaut annotation, and then we have a analytics topic. And then we are basically checking if, payload contains ISBN information, and then find the analytics information for this given IBN, and then, increment it if it is already there. Otherwise, just add a new, increment the count, or otherwise add a new object. So we will be hitting this analytics from our main application. Let's say where we have in our main application, we have this book domain, right? We have it's simple ISBN and name. Then we have a book controller. It's again nothing special. It's a Grails controller with index and show endpoint. And it calls a book service. It's a Grails data service, but it has a show request. Basically calls update analytics through Kafka listener. So update analytics is basically analytics client is a Kafka client, and then which basically calls the topic with this specific ID analytics. This was defined in other application, and there must be a configuration for here. Just give me a second. So you need to, in order to use the Kafka client, you need to add the Kafka servers here, right? I guess this should be list. Correct me, Ivan. I think this should be list, right? Yeah. So this you need to add Kafka servers to this configuration, and once that is done, we also have in this example a Docker compose, which basically start a zookeeper in the Docker. So again, you could have something similar for RabbitMQ client. I think there is a RabbitMQ annotation. It would not be present because of the dependency, but the idea is same. You could use things like RabbitMQ client, and there is Micronaut Elasticsearch configuration. I think you could use that as well. So, and there would be much more coming in future versions, in terms of integration with Micronaut. I mean, this is what Micronaut provide as parent application context for Grails applications. What does not work with Grails? I mean, like, or anything in Micronaut which basically involves a server. Micronaut, distribute tracing, matrices, security, Micronaut security, or core support, and then open API, etc., etc. I mean, like, all these things would not work with Grails. That's all about Grails Framework 5, and there has been some recent releases. We recently released a database migration plugin for 00 RC2. In a couple of days, we'll do an RC3 release followed by a GA. This release basically update to support Liquibase 4.6. There has been some changes, breaking changes in the Liquibase library. So you would need to check the extension upgrade guides or release notes. If you are using something directly instead of Grails database migration plugins, but the plugin would still work. There are no major breaking changes, when you upgrade the plugin to the latest version. I think yesterday or today we released Grails 503. It includes bug fixes and improvements around Gradle, where now with Gradle 7.2 it require for Gradle plugins it require input or output annotations or input file annotation to the Gradle tasks. So if that is not there, it will complain. There were some bugs around Grails factories. One of the result was, you would not see commands in database migration plugin, so that has been fixed. And for more information about other dependency updates, please feel free to check the release notes. Log4j CVE, I mean, like for Grails, we rely on log back, so it does not affect Grails applications, but still you would need to check whether we have a blog post dedicated to it. I would recommend to check out the blog post, but please feel free to you would need to check your applications, like whether you are actually adding log4j dependency somehow. So if you are on Grails 3 or 4, you can use Gradle dependency insight task or dependency report task to figure that out. You can also, if you are using it, you can also force the new version using Gradle configurations. By Gradle configuration, you can check out the documentation on Gradle website, but there's a way you can force a newer version of log4j code. And for Grails 2 applications, it would not affect, because Grails 2 applications were using logback 1, and it only affects applications from logback version 2.2 point something. Yeah. The CVE details are there. What is next for Grails framework? I mean, like you would soon see a Grails 5.1 release, which basically updates to Spring Boot 2.6.1. Spring Boot 2.6 basically contains one important change, right? So you may have this circular references in your project. That has changed in Spring Boot 2.6. By default, it won't allow circular references, but because this is a minor release, so we are manually overriding that configuration in Grails 5.1. But in Grails 6, we would take that out, and we'll also default to disabling circular references. And we updated to Micronaut 3.2 and Hibernate 5.6. Also, the MongoDB driver is also 5.5 to 5.6, and MongoDB driver is 4.3 to 4.4. So these are minor updates as well. And we are updating all dependent libraries such as Grails views and any other Gradle plugin to basically be compatible with Gradle 7.2. Initially, there were some issues with Grails 5.0. And yes. After that, we are planning to have some improvements to the Grails CLI. I mean, making it more flexible and faster. You will soon hear more information around it. That's in the pipeline. And Spring Security Core Grails plugin would be the next item. I mean, for our to-do list. Spring Security Core is basically using an old version of Spring Security. So we need to update it to the latest version as well. So that would be the next item for us in near term. And apart from all that, I mean, like we have this 2GM town hall meeting for Groovy, Grails, and Micronaut. The idea behind is for people to participate and get up to date on what's going on. The next town hall meeting, I'm not sure about the date, but it may change. But I don't know if it is announced yet. But yeah, the next town hall meeting would be next year. And you can see more information on this URL. We encourage everybody to participate, and yeah, share any thoughts you have. We have this recently. I think it's been a long time. We started Grails Foundation, which is a non-profit organization, which is basically, you can read through all these titles, but which is basically responsible for making sure we serve community well, and then taking Grails framework forward in the right direction. We have a technology advisory board, which includes a bunch of people, including me and Graham Roche, and there are a lot of other people. You can find more information on the Grails Foundation website. And we meet quarterly, and discuss the roadmap. And we also publish the notes from the meeting. Again, that would be on this URL. At last, I mean, like, I would like to thank you, the Grails community. I mean, these are amazing people. I've been hearing a lot of people are trying out Grails 5. And I would be happy to help. And, and I'm excited. If you have any thoughts on, or any about any plugin or anything related to Grails 5 or Grails framework overall, yeah, please you can reach out to us at this, through a support form request, or you can also, reach out to me Slack, or you could, reach out directly on Twitter as well, any channel. Lastly, I don't know. I think it is not Christmas already, but I don't know. Yeah, but in advance, Merry Christmas to all of you. I mean, once again, thank you for having me here. I hope you enjoyed this talk. Merry Christmas from the Grails. What was the name of this? I mean, like Gideon, right? There was a name for this.
Yeah, Sir Gideon.
Sorry, can you say that again?
Sir Gideon?
Sir Gideon, right? Yeah, Sir Gideon. Merry Christmas from Sir Gideon as well. I think that's all from my side.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Puneet. We have a question from before. So the question is, do Grails plan to replace Spring with Micronaut under the hood?
No, the short answer to that is no right now. We want to, for now, we want to, hold on. For now, we want to leverage the benefits from both worlds. But I don't know about, future. We haven't decided anything yet. Again, stay tuned to the board meeting. That's where we will decide it. Yeah.
Excellent. We don't have more questions. I will give people a few minutes in case someone's want to ask something. Just remember also, I pasted the link in the chat if you want to enter our raffle, sign up there. And yeah, we will wait a couple of minutes. Thank you for this talk, Puneet. It was great to have you here talking in our user group. It's been a long time since you came here to Madrid for, I think it was Grails like 4 years ago or something like that.
I think I started with OCI at the time. I mean, like that was my joining. I mean, yeah. I mean, like terrible things have happened over this year, and yeah, I don't know. So I hope, one day we'll meet. I'll present in this meetup in person. I'm like, I would be excited, or even in the conference, I would be excited to meet people, all these people.
Sure. Okay, so if there are no more questions, there is another question, but so did you actually release grades 503, or is it still pending?
It is released, but somehow
the docs are not working.
The docs are not working.
Yeah, it's 404. We can discuss this.
Yeah.
After the talk. So yeah, I think. Yeah, you can check it.
Weird. Okay.
Maybe there was an issue with the upload.
Yeah.
So sure we will check it afterwards and we will fix it.
Yeah.
Okay, so that was all. We can start the recording. Thank you very much, everyone, for joining us today. It was a pleasure to have you here. We will have our next meetup, hopefully next year in January. We will share details soon. And that was all. Thank you very much. Don't leave. We are going to do the raffle.
There is just one more question that someone asked on the QA.
Oh, sorry, I missed it. What is it? Yeah, it's here. Yeah, so the question is how we can benefit from Micronaut deploy speed in Grails application.
I mean, like, yeah, you can. I mean, can you repeat the question again?
Sure.
I'm sorry, Juan.
How we can benefit from Micronaut deploy speed in Grails applications?
I mean, like, you can write, as I said, configurations in Micronaut, then you would have benefits, whatever benefits you have, right? Like a low memory footprint and everything in the Grails application as well. I mean, like, you would not go all the way to, update every beam, but, whatever features you can, use from Micronaut, you can benefit it in that way. But yeah, again, you would need to understand, like, a Micronaut Java application versus Micronaut Groovy application versus Grails application, which, uses a lot more Groovy than Micronaut, would be a bit slower in comparison. But, it's the cost you have to weigh in, like whether you want productivity, more productivity, and, more things like Grails does. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Thank you. I think we don't have anything else. So as I said, thank you very much and hope to see you soon. Bye.
Bye, everyone. Thank you once.